In this how-to video, I will demonstrate how to end a residential invoice period. It is important to make sure that you have processed all your cash, check, FPOS, one-off credit card transactions and bulk credit card transactions into your customer accounts. It is also important to make sure that you have cycled the last week of your invoice period to make sure you have a total of 4 weeks. I will do that now. I will cycle my last week. And I can double check how many weeks I have cycled by going into the customer's account and looking at the quantity delivered. So we've got 4 for a weekend paper, which is correct. So now that we have our full 4 weeks cycled, we will proceed to the invoice control section of the system. In here, if you wish to, now is a good time to look at your live account total buttons if you need to determine any outstanding debits and credits you have in total before doing your invoice run. Next, we want to back up the home delivery system. If you get an error message like this, it means that the backup has not occurred, and you will need to rectify this by going into the advanced section of the system and checking your backup file reference. If all has gone well, you will get the backup completed message without any errors in between. Once you have done a successful backup of your system, you can now proceed to ending the invoice period. The system will confirm that you want to end the period and that the action is not reversible. The system will attempt to predict the period end date, and majority of the time this date is true. If it is not true, you can simply override it in the format indicated in the example. Once you've pressed OK, it's a good idea to remove your hands from the keyboard and mouse and just leave the system to attend to the process at hand. The length of time it requires to end this process depends on your system and the number of accounts that you have. Once the process has completed, you will get a confirmation dialog box, which you can simply acknowledge. At this point, if you have a note that needs to appear on the customer's invoice, you may enter it in this box here, as indicated where my mouse is pointing right now and where I'm circling. The next step is to process any automatic credit card payments, and this is covered in a different how-to video. The next step is to go to the reporting section, then to the Zero Invoices report. And then it is a good idea to print off this report and to go into each of these customer accounts and determine why no sales went into the invoice for this particular period. There can be a number of reasons contributing to this, and it's important to investigate and make the appropriate changes to your account status and invoice delivery method field before proceeding with the invoice run. Once you have actioned the Zero Invoice report against your customer accounts, you can head back to the invoice control. If you are using the automated debt control system, you at this point may set the letter markers. The dialog box will just double check that you have finalized your invoices and that you've checked your Zero Invoice report when necessary, and then you can proceed. By setting the letter markers is the point in time at which the system analyzes your customer accounts and determine which letter and which letters customers need to receive and what action to take in terms of accounts that have not received payment. Again, this process can take some time depending on the number of accounts you have and the speed of your system. Once the process has completed, you will receive a confirmation. At this point in time, you may proceed by first printing your debt invoices, followed by removing the invoice paper, inserting blank A4 paper in your printer, and then printing the debt letters. They will be printed in account number order, which simply means you need to match the appropriate letter with the correct invoice and then proceed then onward. Then, once you've done your debt invoices, you can then proceed to selecting your invoice groups and bulk printing each invoice group in turn. Once you have finished producing your printed invoices, you can then set your invoice group to email and proceed to do your bulk email run. The email preview button is there for you to have a look at which accounts will be emailed, and similarly to see that the invoices look in good order. The email log indicates the sending process from iNews. Where you have a process starting and a process ending, we know that the result has been successful. If there has been any errors or issues during the process, you'll receive notification in between these lines with an appropriate account number and the reason why the email did not send. Once you have completed producing, which is printing and emailing all your invoices, you may then start the new period. It is important to note that you must end your period and produce all invoices before starting the period. And it is important to start the new period before you enter any credits for stolen papers or payments which need to be displayed on the customer's next invoice. That concludes this how-to.